Just a moment.
You probably wouldn't guess this from a glance at my channel, but I've played a fair amount of golf games over the years. From Fuji Golf way back on early Windows PCs to, most recently, Easy Come Easy Golf, which is something I'll often play while waiting for a video to render or a huge print job to finish. Though I never really got into the PGA Tour games beyond the early 2000s. I felt the need to lead with that so you'd understand what it takes for me to say that Mecarobot Golf is the worst golf game I've ever played. That guy in Golf Digest who said the N64 YLI game was the worst golf game ever made, he probably didn't know this game existed. It actually starts in promising but somewhat confusing fashion, as the game goes from the title screen, with this robot that looks like something Mystery Science Theater would riff into oblivion, to a shot of some groundskeeper, to an overview of the course you can kind of move around, to an animation of entering the country club like this is a golf-based dungeon crawler, and finally the front desk/main menu. This is pretty much the only redeeming element of Mecarobot Golf. It looks alright, at least when nothing's moving. I would say the music is okay too, except it became really grating after the first few times it looped. Let's get one thing out of the way. This game is a bait and switch. You don't play as a robot or otherwise play any unique robot-based form of golf. If you're looking for that, go play 100-Foot Robot Golf. This is a regular-ass golf game where you play on a normal-ass course as a normal-ass golfer. But you're matched up against a robot named Eagle, whose prime directives are to teach golf and make you feel worse about yourself. Eagle has the longest drive distance, rarely makes mistakes, and if he doesn't get a birdie for a hole, then he either gets par or an eagle. I can count on 2 fingers the amount of times I saw him bogey a hole in the roughly 5.5 hours I played this. I had to track down a specific long play to see anyone beat this Ultraman reject, and it was in doing so that I realized there's no beating Mecarobot Golf. The credits awkwardly start rolling after the score breakdown, whether you win against him or not on certain difficulties. Credits which don't finish scrolling off screen and just linger like a bar patron after closing time. Mecarobot Golf commits 2 cardinal sins. 1, it overpromises and underdelivers. When you make a profile, it asks you to pick a month. According to the instruction booklet, this month determines what season you play during, which will affect how the environment looks, as well as how the ball flies through the air. Except it really doesn't. This is what summer looks like, and fall, and winter, and spring. Are we playing near the equator? 'Cause the only real change in the environment is just how much dead grass there is. I didn't notice any change in things like wind behavior, which regardless of the season changes direction and speed so often between individual shots that it's like playing in a mini cyclone, nor did I notice any change in the roll or flight of the ball, but more on that later. The game also has a dynamic handicap system, where playing better or worse causes the handicap to go up or down. This, I admit, is a personal thing. I have always hated the golf handicap system. It's supposed to help level the playing field, but getting to the end of a course and hearing shit like, "You shot 14 over par, but with your handicap, that's actually 4 under par." I always found that patronizing and a little insulting. Even more so coming from a robot that looks like one Power Ranger without their morpher would kick the shit out of it. There's also a dynamic club system, which is supposed to be helpful, I guess. You start by picking one of 4 sets of clubs, where the main difference is the maximum driving distance, difficulty, and, allegedly, the swing speed. You're supposed to be able to go to the driving range for practice and a chance to boost your maximum distance. But that only happens if you nail multiple perfect shots in a row, which brings me to the biggest problem with this game. To hit each shot, you wait for an indicator to move to the left to determine shot distance, then move to the right to determine the impact point. Left of center gives the ball loft, and right of center gives the ball topspin and a lower trajectory. Someone working on this game decided that the speed of the gauge and impact zone size should be different for each type of club and player level, with the hardest hitting clubs at the higher drive distances moving so fast that you only have 0.15 of a second to make any contact with the ball, and about 0.08 of a second to make contact that won't badly affect the distance of the shot. Miss the zone entirely, and you swing, miss, and have to try again.
in the ass. Fuck you, you stupid cunt.
As such, the odds of hitting multiple perfect shots in a row on the driving range are ridiculously small. And no, the speed of the bar doesn't noticeably or helpfully change until you're on the shortest set of clubs. Not only that, if you don't hit the ball far enough or swing and miss, which is likely if you're just starting the game or coming back to it after doing anything else, I got up, ate dinner, came back and had to get used to timing shots again. At the end, Eagle will pop up and lower your maximum drive distance. At one point, I went into the driving range with a max distance of 230 yards just to practice timing my shots, and when I tried to leave, that cybernetic golf goblin lowered my max distance to 185 yards. He basically grabbed all the woods out of my bag and bent them into bed springs. The only mode which doesn't affect the handicap or drive distance is lesson mode. That sounds like a tutorial or practice mode, right? Something that helps you learn the game? Well, in a way. You still play a regular round of golf against Eagle, but every once in a while a lesson prompt pops up. This causes Eagle to belch out tips about playing real golf, not Mecarobot golf. Most of these are about really specific rules and golf etiquette, and none of them are helpful. Given how he makes rather few mistakes, it just feels like Eagle is lording his golf knowledge over the player. I almost asked if Rory Sabatini was in this robot costume the whole time, but Eagle's not quite that much of an asshole. Also, Rory was about 17 when this game came out. Which brings me to this game's other cardinal sin. The golf itself is an unhealthy mix of boring and frustrating even by golf standards. Part of this is due to the fact that this game only has one course, and many of the holes on said course are pretty samey and blend together. Here's a list of other golf games from the same year or earlier, and here's how many courses they have to play on. A larger part of it is that no matter what, every mode has you play against someone else, whether it's against Eagle or the family mode, where you play against Eagle and two other members of a nondescript family, one of which randomly cried for help while I was playing, like she desperately wanted to escape this game. I don't blame her.
If you lose, you're out of the family.
Homer!
Oh.
This means every round of golf will take at least twice as long as it should, since you're forced to watch everyone else take their turn and you can't fast forward or skip anything. This is the part where I point out that there's a button on the controller that does nothing and could have been given this functionality. That would be less of a problem if not for one thing. This game is painfully slow. If there were golf carts in this game, they would beat the ball to its landing spot almost every time. Depending on the map, every shot over 200 yards that doesn't land in a hazard will take anywhere from 15 to 23 seconds from when the ball is hit to when it stops moving. Here are those 4 other golf games I mentioned earlier from the same year Mecarobot Golf came out, or a few years earlier. And here is about how much time each 200+ yard shot takes in these games. Because of the slow shots and always having to play against at least the robot, my first competition playthrough took over an hour to finish.
Speed it the hell up.
It didn't help that there was a random cutscene where the robot and player got on a boat in between some of the later wait a minute. That's not the player golfer or any of the family members. Who is that? The reason shots are so slow is this game's attempt at 3D, which has all the same problems as most early attempts at 3D course renders. Objects wobble around when they move or otherwise don't display properly, meaning not only can a ball land in grass but the game will think it's in a bunker, but the pin for the hole will look like it's in one position when lining up a shot and shift somewhere else when the ball takes flight. The trees are like if Agent Smith were a plant. They appear to weave around the ball if it comes toward them, and the branches have zero collision detection. The only way you'll hit them is if the ball lines up dead center with them. They're basically wooden light poles. And the hole itself? Holes are a social construct, man. They are what you make them. Unless you're putting, then who the fuck knows? The green is supposed to look like it's uneven in certain parts, but because of how plain this all looks, particularly for anyone who's colorblind, like me, you can press a button to see arrows indicating where the green breaks a certain direction. However, these arrows can be so nondescript and spread out that it's hard to tell how much the green breaks in a certain direction or where it stops breaking. Earlier games like Lee Trevino's Fighting Golf managed to get this across much better with similar but more nuanced visual tells. Of course, there's also the matter of the putting screen somehow also having a single-digit frame rate, except for the mini cutscene of the ball rolling into the hole because priorities. And it has the same display problem as the rest of the course. Balls will roll over the hole but not go in. Balls will roll to the side of the hole but somehow end up in the cup. And judging distance can be just as nebulous and confusing as it is away from the green, but without the losing distance because reasons mechanic. And then there's everything else. The minimap makes some parts of the course look like bunkers are jutting into the fairway, but they aren't. Even if they were, the game allows using a driver for a ball half buried in sand, so whatever, I guess. The dot used for aiming is not an indicator of how far a max distance shot will fly, which for a map this small means judging distance is significantly harder. The wind will affect shots sometimes, and other times it seems like it does nothing. Pivoting the stance to make the ball curve a little will sometimes make it curve way too much. The distance for shots was so inconsistent I would intentionally try to overshoot the green and still end up several yards short, or try to undershoot the green and fly 15 yards past it. And the cherry on top of all this, for at least one hole, if your maximum distance isn't long enough, either because you picked the easier difficulty with shorter clubs or Eagle gave you a driving range circumcision, you can't clear the water hazard without taking a massive detour. This is not a case of looking back and saying it's the worst golf game I've ever played because it's older. It wasn't even good for its time. I've already named a few golf games from around the same time or earlier, and I would rather play any of them than this. And for the record, I'll also throw in N64 Wily to that list. It actually has a couple of the same problems as Mecarobot Golf, but you can finish 18 holes faster, and it's easier to tell where your shot is going. The funny part about that is many golf games on the SNES before this were awkward ports of DOS games, but I would still take them over Mecarobot Golf, a game specifically made for the Super Nintendo. Though I guess that's to be expected because the people who made this were the same development team that made Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
They're both losers!